Player props here on PrizePicks for Wednesday, May 17th. Before I get started, there's a link in the description below. You guys can sign up for PrizePicks there, or you can use promo code TUFF. 100% deposit match. Discord link in the description. The main server is completely free. We do also have the Patreon link in there as well, where I do post all the plays here that I'm making on PrizePicks for each given sport that I do play. Again, I'm not a gambling expert, and this is not financial advice. It is simply just the plays I'm personally looking at making. Hopefully, give you guys some insight and analysis to then make your own player prop decisions here. But let's get right into it, you guys. Again, no one's pressing submit on those parlays other than yourself. But we went 2-0 yesterday. We hit on both the plays. We hit on the Nikola Jokic over 9.5 assists. I mean, that was like pretty much free. I think some of you guys played that even at 10, so that would have hit for you guys. And then Anthony Davis, 25.5 fantasy score in the first half. That actually ended up bumping up to 26, I believe, before tip-off, and he smashed the over on that with 33. So 2-0 yesterday, definitely looking to replicate that today. We got this Miami-Boston game 1 here. I believe Boston is going to be 8-point favorites. I'm not sure why RotoWire is not showing the spreads here currently, but I think Boston is going to be 8-point favorites in this game here. But Miami does have that rest advantage. I mean, Miami's been off for, I think, 4 or 5 days now. So they should be very, very well rested. Obviously, Coach Spo is going to put a great game plan together to probably keep them in this game. I think I think it should be a close game in my opinion. I really, really do think, and I'm hoping it's a close game, obviously. But I got 2 plays here that I'm targeting from this game. Don't want to waste anyone's time. Let's just get right to it. So the first one, I got to go to Jimmy Butler's 48 fantasy score here. Now, this was at 52 for that game, I believe 6 versus New York, and he kind of sold us. He finished with 39.6 here, but he has hit the over on this in 3 of his last 4 games, and New York was a tough matchup for him. New York was double teaming him constantly. He only averaged about 24 points per game, was getting kind of blitzed on every single offensive possession. But let's get into why I like this play here. Obviously, playoff Jimmy is just a monster, and this is kind of the lowest we've seen his fantasy score game log since the Milwaukee series, obviously earlier in the playoffs. But at 48 flat, this was kind of consistently been at 48.5, 49, 49.5 the entire New York series, and like I said, it was at 52 in that game 6. But we take a look at Jimmy Butler's odds here. So for him to go over, like, obviously the steals and blocks are crucial for Jimmy Butler to clear his fantasy score. And I mean, in a game where there's wings that have the ball in their hands at tons, Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler, he should be able to get some steals and blocks for us. But we take a look, for example, like his over 40.5 PRA here obviously doesn't have the greatest hit rate, but I did want to share this with you guys here on Outlier. We can see here 31, 39, 40, 40, 35, 43, 35, and 36 is his PRA. But he doesn't necessarily need to clear, like, I think his PRA line is set at 40.5. He doesn't necessarily need to clear his PRA here to clear his fantasy score line. As you can see here, this is how he's kind of done in the playoffs so far. We take a look at Outlier. Again, there's a link to the Outlier 7-day free trial top of this description of this video, you guys. It's the best app in my opinion. Mobile app is absolutely elite, you guys, so go to check that out. But this is his last 10 games, right? These are all obviously all in the playoffs here, but like, just take a look, for example, like this game at New York. He finished with 35 PRA, but in that game at New York, he finished with 57.9 fantasy points, which is almost 10 fantasy points higher than this line is currently at, because of that defensive prowess and because of his limiting turnovers, right? Only 1 turnover. He only shot the ball 12 times in that game. We take a look here at the game against New York in game 6. He had 0 steals and blocks, which was actually the first game in all of the playoffs where he had 0 stocks. Okay, so I mean, if he can get 1 to 2 stocks in that game 6, it's much closer to a 48 fantasy score in my opinion. So Jimmy Butler here as well against Boston. He's hit the over on this in 3 of his last 4 games versus Boston. Obviously, only has played Boston and played in games versus Boston twice this season. He played at Boston, finished with 50.5 fantasy back here on December 2nd. So he cleared in his most recent game in Boston, and then his most recent game in Boston, besides that earlier game in December, he finished with 83.8 fantasy, you guys. 47, 9, 8, 4 steals, 1 block, 1 turnover, 16 for 29. Jimmy Butler's already talked about, he's like quoted in saying, we're going to go into game 1 looking to steal game 1. We're going in fired up. He's ready to go. I saw him post something on social media about Boston. He's on the way. He's going to be absolutely ready to go, locked and loaded in this matchup. And take a look at Jimmy Butler's on the road, his fantasy score, averaging 46.2 fantasy score per 36 minutes. I mean, if in a close game, we can assume Jimmy Butler's going to play 40-plus minutes. He is averaging over 1.3 fantasy points per minute on the road over his last 4 games, which, again, 1.3. I'm going to do the calculator really quickly here on my phone. 1.3 fantasy points per minute, just conservatively. Let's say he plays, 38 minutes. That should be around 49.4 fantasy points. So a little bit lower, right, than what the fantasy score, a little bit higher than what the fantasy score line is currently at. But something also I liked here, we take a look at 48 for Jimmy. We take a look at James Harden in this series, right, without Joel Embiid. He finished with 58.2 fantasy, 39 minutes, 45, 1, 6, 2 steals, and 3 turnovers, 17 for 30. He finished with 58. In the series before that against Atlanta, in the game without DeJounte Murray, Trae Young finished with 64.3, finishing with 38, 4, 13, and 2. But I wanted to talk about these two guys here in their fantasy score lines because, James Harden without Joel Embiid is right. They could easily double him. And Trae Young without DeJounte Murray, they could easily double him. But the Celtics kind of relied on their single-man coverage. They do have elite single one-on-one defenders. So, they didn't double either of these guys in these games. So I can assume, not assume, but I can imagine Jimmy Butler gets a ton of single coverage, which brings me back to kind of how he was being guarded in the Milwaukee series, where he went absolutely crazy, clearing this line in 3 games, 61, 71, and 63.5 fantasy. I think, them showing that they're not going to double these stars, even in close games, even when they're going crazy. We saw, like I said, both these guys go crazy without their co-stars. Jimmy Butler doesn't really have a co-star on this team. I guess Bam Adebayo, but just offensively, no one's going to really be doubling Bam. So I like Jimmy Butler here, 48 fantasy, especially with the push potential of 48.0. This maybe has a chance to bump up, in my opinion, here. But I do like Jimmy tonight. I think it's just one of those guys you have to roll with. And if he plays horribly, he plays horribly. But the floor, in my opinion, is too high for him to not hit this. So I like Jimmy over 48 fantasy. And then the second one is definitely an interesting one, but I think it's a buy low opportunity, and it's going to be Derek White over 12.5 PRA. So in that series versus what is that? Who they just play? Philly. Sorry. Derek White lost some minutes in the rotation because of Joel Embiid. The Celtics were running a 2-big lineup with Robert Williams and Al Horford, and he really, he lost a ton of minutes in the rotation. But I think versus Miami, he's going to get those minutes back. I could even see him getting back into the starting lineup with just Bam Adebayo. Miami does play a ton of small ball with Bam Adebayo, and then just a bunch of kind of wings around him. With they'll even play Jimmy Butler at the 4. They'll play Caleb Martin at the 4. Kevin Love will get his minutes, but I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity with Derek White here, looking to chase around those shooters like Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry. So there's going to be minutes for Derek White. I think he's going to be playing 25-plus minutes in this series, 25-plus minutes tonight more specifically. But we take a look at outlier here. Look at the hit rate for Derek White. It's so much green, right? This is his hit rate when he plays 27-plus minutes. Let's even break this down to 25 really quickly, you guys. Again, link in the description below. Free 7-day trial using Outlier. But we take a look at all the green here for Derek White this season. We take a look at home. The hit rate at home is absolutely elite for Derek White when he plays 25-plus minutes to clear the over on this 12.5 PRA here. It's a 72% hit rate in general this season. Head-to-head versus Miami, he's been extremely, extremely successful. We take a look at Derek White's PRA game log this season versus Miami, 32, 20, 21, and 18 PRA in 4 games versus Miami. 20 and 21 at home, right? So, Boston, they know Miami plays that zone defense. It allows shooters and players that don't play so much on the ball to get open shots. I think that's going to be the situation here for Derek White. I think he should have a ton of opportunity in this game. I think Miami loves to play small. We take a look at kind of Miami's rotations. Miami plays, this is over the last 3 games, or let's do last 5. Obviously, the series versus the Knicks, series versus the Knicks obviously is a little bit different, but I think matchup-wise, we're looking at Bam, Jimmy, Strus, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry, and Caleb Martin are their next 4 guys that play significant minutes on this team over the last 5. Even Duncan Robinson now here. So we're looking at 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their 8 guys that get the most rotations on the team are guys that Derek White can guard. Derek White was second team, all defensive team. So Derek White's going to get his minutes here. We take a look at Derek White's PRA game log this season, including the playoffs. We take away these games, these last 3 games where Boston kind of changed their lineup versus Philly. He did still finish with 12 and 12 in these in games 6 and 5 and 6, but then hit the over on this in 3 games prior to that, 17, 21, and 14. Against Atlanta, had some massive games, 36, 35, 17, 22, 27. So he hit this in 4 of 6 games versus Atlanta as well. So if Derek White plays 25-plus minutes, I think he matches up very, very well against Miami. We take a look at kind of other guards, PRA game log versus Miami. We saw similar players, right? Like Josh Hart, similar player to Derek White. Defensive guy, can hit the open shots. Not really playing a ton on the ball, but Derek White, I would say, plays more on the ball than Josh Hart. 19 PRA. Quentin Grimes down here, 17 PRA. Quentin Grimes down here, 16. Let's look at some other guys. Emmanuel Quickley, 12. Obviously, he's not the same player. We look at Emmanuel Quickley down here, 12. Grayson Allen, 15. We're talking about complementary wings and guards here. 15 for Pat Connaughton. Pat Connaughton, 21 here. Grayson Allen, 19. Pat Connaughton, 29. And this is all against Miami, so there should be opportunity here for Derek White. I think in that zone defense that Miami plays, there is opportunity. We look at Derek White's home versus away splits. He does average slightly a little more points per game, a little more rebounds, and a little more assists per game across the board. We're looking at, on the season at home, Derek White looking at 16 and a half, 19. Like we're looking at well over 20 PRA average at home for Derek White. We take a look at this season at home per 36 minutes. Not saying Derek White's going to play 36 minutes, but per 36 minutes, you guys, in 40 games, Derek White, 15.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, and 4.9 assists. He can easily clear this tonight with just points alone. I think it's a great spot for Derek White, honestly. I think the success he's had against Miami this season, you can see the green against Miami this season, green this season just in general. We're talking about home or away, regardless, 72% hit rate this season. I like Derek White here to bounce back, and what I do believe should matchup rotation should give him more minutes in this series. So these are the two YouTube plays for this video, you guys. You got Jimmy Butler, the guy here for Miami at 48 flat fantasy, and then Derek White over 12.5 PRA full game. Both these plays are full game. Let me know in the comments below how you guys feel about these two. Again, I also want to mention you don't need to pair these in a two-man power if you don't like one of them. These are just two separate plays. I'm pairing them in a two-man power to show you guys, give you guys reference, and to keep track of my wins and whatever. But just keep in mind, you don't need to play this in a two-man power. So let me know in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and as always, let's cash.